Living alone can either be your greatest prison or your greatest weapon. The thin line between these two realities is drawn by the choices you make every single day. Most men don't notice it, but they are silently sabotaging themselves, falling into invisible traps that corrode the mind, weaken the spirit, and bury discipline under layers of comfort and distraction. These mistakes don't shout, they whisper, and before you know it, they have reshaped your life into something smaller, weaker, and far away from the man you were meant to become. Today, guided by the timeless wisdom of the Stoics, we are going to expose the 12 fatal mistakes that lonely men must avoid at all costs if they want to turn solitude into power, clarity, and resilience. Each one of these errors is a hidden chain, and if you don't recognize them, you will carry them unknowingly until your soul is crushed. But if you do recognize them and you act, solitude will stop being a curse and will become the very furnace where your strongest self is forged. And stay with me until the end, because I will reveal the bonus mistake number 13. One of the most dangerous errors almost never spoken of, but powerful enough to rewrite your entire destiny. This revelation alone could change the way you see yourself forever. If you want to rise above mediocrity, you cannot miss it. Before we begin, do one thing that will seal your commitment to this transformation. Hit the like button to show you're ready. Subscribe if you haven't yet so you don't miss the next lesson. And comment the word power below. Because the very act of writing it down is a declaration that from this moment on, you refuse to live as a victim of solitude. You choose to master it. Mistakes number 1. Becoming a slave to emotional cravings. One of the most dangerous traps for a man living alone is to become a slave to his own emotional cravings. The absence of company creates an empty space, and instead of using that silence as a battlefield to build inner strength, many men rush to fill it with noise. They chase after likes on social media, meaningless conversations, short-term pleasures, or hollow relationships that exist only to silence the fear of being with themselves. But every time you do this, you trade your freedom for a chain. You hand over your power to people who don't even care about your destiny. Epictetus warned us with words that cut through time itself. Don't wish for events to happen as you want them, but wish for them to happen as they do, and you will live in peace. Do you see what this means? It means that the hunger you feel for constant attention is not a curse of solitude. It is the mirror of your lack of self-mastery. When you wait for the world to validate you, you are saying, I cannot stand on my own. I need others to tell me who I am. And nothing weakens a man more than that confession, even if it is silent. The Stoics knew that true power comes from within, and that freedom is lost the moment you rely on external approval to feel complete. Imagine a man who spends his night scrolling endlessly, desperate for a notification, a message, a sign that he has been noticed. He believes he is feeding his emptiness, but in truth, he is starving his soul. Because the more you seek outside, the less you find inside. The void grows, the anxiety multiplies, and soon your entire life revolves around satisfying cravings that were never meant to be satisfied. The solution is radical. Stop asking others to complete what only you can build. Learn to sit in silence, not as punishment, but as training. Learn to walk through the fire of solitude without begging for water. When you master that, you will find something most men never discover: inner stability that no one can give and no one can take away. But if you fail, your solitude will not strengthen you. It will devour you. And that is why this first mistake is fatal, because it is the door through which all other weaknesses enter. Now, let me ask you, what happens to a man who closes that door and begins to master himself instead of craving others? The answer will shake the very way you see your own reflection. Mistakes number 2, neglecting daily discipline. Neglecting daily discipline is one of the most silent, yet most destructive mistakes a man living alone can ever make. When no one is watching, when no one is there to demand accountability, the temptation to drift is overwhelming. Days blend into nights. Nights blur into wasted hours, and suddenly you look back and realize weeks have vanished into smoke. Solitude without discipline does not give you freedom. It breeds chaos. Seneca warned us clearly. Discipline is the mother of success, and he was right. Because without discipline, solitude mutates into decay. Discipline is not a prison. It is the architecture of liberty. It is the invisible structure that transforms empty hours into sacred opportunities. Think about it. When you live alone, there is no voice telling you to wake up early, no eyes judging whether you worked on your craft, no hand pulling you back to your path. The only guard at the gate is you, and if you fall asleep at your post, mediocrity storms in. Men without discipline become prisoners of their impulses. They eat when they are bored. They sleep when they are anxious. They scroll when they are restless. Their lives shrink into a cycle of distractions while their dreams slowly rot in silence. But the man of discipline does the opposite. He transforms solitude into a fortress. He builds routines not to cage himself, but to sharpen himself. Waking up early becomes an act of war against laziness. Training the body becomes a declaration that the mind will not collapse. Reading, writing, meditating. These become rituals that separate him from the masses drowning in their own weakness. What most men don't understand is that discipline is not suffering. It is alignment. It is the act of bending time to your will instead of bending yourself to time. It is how you take control of the only thing that truly belongs to you. Your present moment. Imagine two men, both living alone. One wakes up at noon, spends hours lost in endless entertainment, and complains that solitude feels heavy. The other rises at dawn, moves his body, feeds his mind, and crafts his purpose. Both live in the same world, but their lives are not even comparable. One decays in silence. The other builds an empire within himself. If you neglect discipline, you surrender your freedom. But if you embrace it, you turn every hour into a weapon. That is why Seneca insisted that success is born from discipline, because without it, solitude is not strength. It is slow suicide. And here lies the haunting truth. Every single day you wake up, you are either sharpening the sword of your destiny or letting it rust beyond repair. Which man are you becoming? The one who wastes his solitude or the one who commands it like a general leading his army? The answer to that question will determine whether your loneliness becomes a curse or the soil where your legend begins. Mistakes number 3. Fearing silence instead of embracing it. Fearing silence is one of the gravest errors a man living alone can commit. Because silence is not empty, it is alive. It is the mirror that reflects the raw truth of who you are, without filters, without masks, without distractions. And yet most men, terrified of what they might see in that mirror, run from it. They drown themselves in endless noise, in constant chatter, in the flickering light of screens, because they cannot bear to sit with their own thoughts. But here lies the paradox. The very silence they avoid is the only place where true power is forged. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote his meditations not in the chaos of applause, but in the stillness of the night, facing the silence as a companion and a teacher. He understood that solitude is not a void. It is the forge of wisdom. Noise promises comfort, but it delivers weakness. When you fill every moment with distraction, you lose the ability to hear the quiet voice within you that says, "This is who you really are. This is what you must face. This is where you must grow." A man who cannot endure silence is a man who does not know himself. And a man who does not know himself is easily controlled by the world. Silence is where the Stoic trains his mind, where he organizes chaos into clarity, where he strips away illusions and finds the essence of what truly matters. But ignoring silence is like ignoring your own soul. It leaves you restless, anxious, and perpetually hungry for noise that never satisfies. Imagine a warrior who refuses to train because the arena feels too empty. He walks into battle unprepared, easily defeated, not because his enemy was stronger, but because he never mastered himself in the stillness before the fight. This is the fate of the man who flees from silence. But the one who embraces it transforms loneliness into a sacred temple. In the quiet, he learns patience. In the quiet, he sharpens focus. In the quiet, he discovers resilience so deep that no storm can break it. The man who befriends silence becomes indestructible because he no longer fears being alone with himself. And here is the terrifying secret. If you cannot sit alone in silence for 10 minutes, how will you stand strong in the storms of life? If you cannot master the stillness of your own room, how will you ever master the noise of the world? The truth is simple yet brutal. Your ability to command silence determines your ability to command your destiny. The man who fears it will always be weak. The man who embraces it becomes untouchable. But ask yourself, what happens when silence stops being your enemy and becomes your greatest weapon? The answer will shake everything you thought you knew about solitude. Mistakes number 4. Ignoring physical self-care. Ignoring physical self-care is a mistake that silently poisons the foundation of a man's strength. Many believe the mind and body are separate, but the Stoics knew the truth. They are inseparable allies. A neglected body does not just weaken muscles, it corrodes focus, blurs clarity, and steals the very energy needed to pursue greatness. Seneca declared with sharp precision, "No man is sound of soul without sound of body." When you abandon your health, you are not just skipping workouts or eating poorly. You are dismantling the very temple that houses your spirit. Living alone can make this trap even more seductive. No one is watching what you eat. No one notices when you skip your training. No one comments when you spend nights scrolling instead of sleeping. And in that silence, excuses multiply. You tell yourself you'll get back on track tomorrow, but tomorrow turns into weeks. And weeks turn into a shell of a man whose mind is foggy and whose body betrays him. The irony is brutal. Men seek power, but they discard the simplest gateway to it, their own physical well-being. Strength is not about vanity. It is not about sculpting an image for others. It's about cultivating a body capable of carrying a disciplined mind through the storms of life. The man who trains his body is not just building muscle. He is rehearsing resilience, practicing consistency, and proving to himself daily that comfort will never rule him. Food, rest, movement. These are not luxuries. They are weapons. Neglect them, and you dull the blade of your spirit. Master them, and you become a warrior equipped for every battle inside and out. Picture two men, both live alone. Both face the same challenges. One fuels himself with chaos, junk food, late nights, no exercise. He drags himself through each day exhausted, irritable, unfocused. The other treats his body as sacred, training, eating with discipline, sleeping with intention. He walks into each day sharp, decisive, unshakable. These two men are not separated by fate. They are separated by choice. And your choices repeated daily are what forge destiny. If you ignore physical self-care, solitude will consume you with fatigue, weakness, and doubt. But if you honor it, you transform solitude into a laboratory of strength. And here lies the haunting question. When the trials of life strike, will your body betray you, or will it be the unbreakable armor that carries your spirit forward? The answer depends entirely on the decisions you make tonight, tomorrow, and every day after. And it is precisely in that decision where the true difference between an ordinary man and a rare one is revealed. Mistakes number 5. Living trapped in the past. Living trapped in the past is one of the most subtle prisons a man can build for himself. Alone with his thoughts, he replays old betrayals, failed relationships, missed opportunities, and mistakes that no longer exist anywhere except in his mind. He believes he is reflecting, but in truth, he is shackling himself to ghosts. Resentment becomes a chain, regret becomes a weight, and soon he is not living in the present at all. He is merely surviving inside an endless replay of yesterday. Epictetus warned us with a truth sharper than steel. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The past has already happened. It cannot harm you anymore unless you keep handing it power with your thoughts. The danger of dwelling on the past is not just emotional, it is practical. A man chained to old wounds becomes hesitant, insecure, and fearful. He sabotages new opportunities because he expects them to fail like the old ones. He poisons new relationships because he suspects they will betray him like those before. He walks forward, but his eyes are fixed backward, and so he stumbles again and again. This is why the Stoics taught the art of release not for others, but for yourself. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is a weapon. It cuts the chains of resentment and frees you to walk unburdened. Imagine a warrior who enters battle dragging corpses from old wars tied to his back. He is slower, weaker, distracted, and eventually defeated. Not because his enemy was stronger, but because he refused to drop the dead weight. This is exactly what happens when you refuse to let go of the past. You think you are honoring your pain, but in truth, you are sabotaging your future. The man who chooses to release, however, is unstoppable. He understands that the past cannot be erased, but it can be reframed. Every scar becomes a lesson. Every failure becomes training. Every betrayal becomes a test that refined him into something sharper. The present moment is the only battlefield where life happens. If you surrender it to memories, you are abandoning the only ground where you actually have power. Epictetus was right. Your reaction is everything. You cannot change the fact that you were hurt, but you can decide whether that hurt defines you or refines you. The choice is brutal but liberating. And here's the revelation. A man who keeps reliving yesterday will never meet tomorrow. He will wake up one day old, bitter, and empty, realizing he spent his entire life wrestling with shadows. But the man who lets go, who accepts what cannot be changed, who chooses to live here and now, he becomes free in a way most men will never understand. Which man will you be? The one who dies in yesterday's chains, or the one who breaks them and walks into the fire of today unbound? The answer will determine not only your peace, but the very direction of your destiny. Mistakes number 6, chasing external approval. Chasing external approval is one of the most seductive poisons a man can drink, because it disguises itself as progress. You post something online, and the dopamine rush of likes convinces you that you matter. You receive a message, and for a fleeting second, you feel significant. Someone compliments you, and suddenly your value skyrockets, but only until the silence returns. And then you're empty again, waiting for the next drop of validation to drip into your veins. This cycle is not empowerment. It is enslavement. It is the slow surrender of your soul to forces that do not care whether you rise or fall. Marcus Aurelius left us a warning as clear as fire in the dark. It is not the opinion of others, but your own reasoned choice that shapes your life. When you live for approval, you give away the throne of your mind. You let strangers sit in the seat of your destiny. Think about it. Approval is volatile. One day they love you. The next day they forget you. One day you are praised. The next you are criticized. If your worth depends on that shifting tide, you will never stand on solid ground. You will live like a leaf tossed by the wind, never rooted, never stable, never free. True freedom is when your sense of self does not rise and fall with applause or silence. The Stoics understood this deeply. The only approval that matters is the one that comes from living in alignment with your values, your discipline, your reasoned choices. That is the approval no one can strip away. No matter how loudly the world mocks or ignores you. Imagine two men. One wakes up every morning checking his phone, desperate to know if the world noticed him. His energy is dictated by numbers, hearts, and comments. When they are many, he feels like a king. When they are few, he feels worthless. The other wakes up with a different fire. His measure of success is not how many people saw him, but whether he conquered his own weaknesses, whether he kept his word, whether he moved one step closer to his mission. Who do you think is truly untouchable? The man who is enslaved by applause, or the man who stands tall even in silence? And here is the bitter truth. The man who needs approval will always be controlled. He will change his words to fit the crowd. He will compromise his values to gain acceptance. He will abandon his path for a temporary cheer. But the man who refuses to bow to external validation becomes dangerous. He becomes rare. He becomes free, because his compass is internal. His approval is earned within, and his choices are guided not by fleeting praise, but by unshakable principles. But here is the question you cannot ignore. What happens when you finally stop begging the world to confirm your worth and instead stand on the unshakable ground of your own reasoned choice? The answer is not comfort, it is transformation. And the man who embraces that transformation is the one who leaves behind the masses forever. Mistakes number 7. Choosing short-term comfort over long-term growth. Choosing short-term comfort over long-term growth is one of the deadliest errors a man can make in solitude because it feels harmless in the moment, but it rots the foundation of his future. The temptation is everywhere. The soft bed that whispers you don't need to rise early. The phone that seduces you with endless scrolling. The meal that satisfies your hunger but sabotages your body. The habit of always reaching for what is easy instead of what is necessary. Each small decision seems insignificant, but together they weave a web that traps you in mediocrity. The Stoics knew that true achievement does not grow in comfort. It grows in endurance. It demands patience. It demands discipline. It demands a man who is willing to delay gratification today for strength tomorrow. Seneca wrote that nothing valuable comes without struggle, and he was right. Every empire, every body of wisdom, every triumph was built brick by brick, day by day in moments when comfort had to be rejected. Instant gratification weakens resolve because it trains your mind to expect reward without sacrifice. And once that pattern is set, you become incapable of facing real adversity. When the storm comes, you collapse because your entire life was built on pillows instead of stone. But when you learn to resist comfort, you train your soul to hunger not for ease, but for growth. And that hunger transforms you into something unbreakable. Think of the man who chooses short-term comfort. He skips his workout. He avoids the difficult conversation. He delays the project. At first it feels like relief, but then the years pass and his reflection becomes unrecognizable, softer, weaker, filled with regret. Contrast him with the man who endures discomfort. He pushes through the cold morning run. He works while others rest. He denies himself fleeting pleasures for the sake of a greater future. At first it feels like struggle, but then the years pass, and his reflection is forged in iron. Disciplined, powerful, free. Both men had the same time, the same solitude, the same opportunities. The difference was the price they were willing to pay. Short-term comfort is a thief dressed as a friend. It steals silently, leaving you empty when you need strength the most. Long-term growth, however, is a strict teacher that at first feels cruel, but in the end hands you the crown. The Stoics embraced hardship not because they enjoyed pain, but because they understood that growth demands it. To avoid discomfort is to avoid transformation. And here is the haunting revelation. If you live only for comfort, you will pay with your future. If you endure discomfort now, you will be rewarded with a life most men can only dream of. The choice is before you every single day, and the man you will become is hidden inside that choice. But the question is, when the next temptation for ease whispers in your ear, will you obey it or will you choose the fire that forges legends? The answer will decide whether you remain ordinary or ascend into the rare few who conquer themselves. Mistakes number 8, surrounding yourself with toxic people or no one at all. Surrounding yourself with toxic people or isolating yourself completely is a mistake that silently poisons the soul. Many men living alone believe they are untouched by influence, that their solitude shields them from the energy of others. But the truth is sharper. The people you allow into your life, even in small doses, shape your destiny more than you realize. Marcus Aurelius left no room for doubt when he wrote, "We are made for cooperation. Human beings are not designed to thrive in total isolation, nor are they meant to be dragged down by destructive company. Both extremes are deadly. On one side, there are toxic people, those who drain your energy, belittle your vision, or infect your mind with negativity. They disguise themselves as friends, but their words are weapons. Their presence is poison, and their influence is corrosion disguised as companionship. Being around them may feel tolerable in the moment, but slowly, their mindset seeps into yours. You begin to lower your standards, to doubt yourself, to think smaller. The flame of your ambition weakens not because you lack discipline, but because you allowed the wrong fire to burn beside you. On the other side, there is total withdrawal. Some men hurt by betrayal or burned by disappointment choose to lock the world out completely. At first, solitude feels safe, but over time it hardens into isolation, a desert where your thoughts echo endlessly with no challenge, no contrast, no growth, and just like stagnant water, the mind cut off from healthy relationships begins to rot. The Stoics never glorified total detachment from humanity. They sought balance, to stand firm in your individuality, but to sharpen yourself against others who also walk the path of virtue. The key is discernment. A wise circle does not need to be large. Sometimes it is only one or two allies. But those allies must push you higher. They must remind you of your mission when you forget it. They must challenge your weakness and celebrate your discipline. This kind of company multiplies your strength. It anchors you when storms hit. It keeps you from becoming lost in the labyrinth of your own solitude. Picture it clearly. Two men, both living alone. One surrounds himself with cynics, gossipers, and men without purpose. He becomes like them, drifting, bitter, drained. The other carefully chooses even just one companion of wisdom and honor, or cultivates small but meaningful connections that align with his values. He becomes sharper, stronger, more resilient. The difference between the two is the difference between corrosion and cultivation. Here is the haunting truth. Every person in your life is either building your empire or burning it. There is no neutral ground, and the man who pretends he can walk alone forever will eventually collapse under the weight of isolation, which leaves us with a question that cannot be ignored. Who walks beside you in the silence of your solitude? Because the answer to that question will either forge your greatness or destroy it completely. Mistakes number 9, living without purpose or clear goals. Living without purpose or clear goals is like sailing an endless ocean without a compass. The waves of life carry you anywhere. The winds of circumstance decide your fate. And every day feels the same because you are moving but going nowhere. This is not living, it is drifting. Seneca captured this with piercing clarity. If one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. Think about that. It doesn't matter how strong the wind is, how fast your ship moves, or how much energy you spend rowing. If you have no destination, every effort is wasted. For men living alone, this mistake is even more dangerous because solitude magnifies emptiness. Without a clear sense of direction, the hours you spend alone become suffocating. You wake up, you eat, you pass the time, but deep down you know you are not moving toward anything, and that knowledge corrodes the spirit slowly, silently until you begin to believe your life has no meaning. That belief is fatal because a man without purpose is a man who has already surrendered. But purpose does not need to be grandiose. It doesn't have to be about conquering nations or building empires. Purpose is simply a chosen direction, a lighthouse that guides you through the fog of solitude. It could be mastering your craft, building your health, serving your community, or pursuing wisdom. What matters is not the size of the purpose, but the clarity of it. A man with even a modest but clear goal will walk with more strength than a man with infinite talents but no vision. The Stoics understood this profoundly. They believed that life is not about length, but about direction. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that his duty was to live according to nature, to serve, to improve, to act with virtue. He didn't wander waiting for inspiration. He anchored himself with purpose every single morning. And that is exactly what the solitary man must do. Wake up each day knowing where his energy is pointed, or risk losing that energy to distractions that lead nowhere. Imagine two men again. One drifts through life, changing course every week, chasing whatever feels good in the moment and collapsing when storms come because he has nothing worth enduring for. The other has a clear mission. He may face setbacks. He may get delayed, but he never doubts his direction. Every challenge only hardens his resolve because he knows where he is headed. The first man wastes his solitude. The second man uses it as fuel. And here is the mystery that too many ignore. Solitude without purpose becomes a curse, but solitude with purpose becomes a secret weapon. It gives you the power to walk alone and still feel complete, to suffer hardships and still see meaning, to sacrifice comfort and still feel alive. Which leaves one pressing question hanging in the air. If your life ended tomorrow, could you say you sailed toward your chosen port? Or would you admit you spent your years drifting, hoping the wind would decide for you? The answer to that question will either liberate you or expose the chains you've been pretending not to see. Mistakes number 10, letting pride block learning. Letting pride block learning is a mistake that blinds more men than failure ever will. Failure can teach you if you are humble enough to listen, but pride shuts the door before wisdom can even knock. The man who believes he already knows enough has sentenced himself to stagnation. He may appear confident, but inside he is hollow, because true strength begins not with arrogance, but with humility, the quiet courage to admit that you are unfinished, that you are still a student, that wisdom is a fire you must approach again and again. Pride whispers, "You've learned enough. You've suffered enough. You don't need guidance." But this whisper is a trap. Every time you believe it, you stop growing, you stop adapting, you stop evolving. And life punishes that blindness with brutal precision because the world keeps moving. Challenges keep rising. And the man who refuses to learn is left defenseless when the next storm arrives. Seneca warned that ignorance is not just the absence of knowledge, it is the refusal to seek it, and this refusal is fatal. Humility, however, is not weakness. It is strength disguised as openness. It takes immense courage to admit, "I don't know. I was wrong. Teach me." Only men of true power can lower their pride enough to grow. A proud man builds walls around himself, hoping to protect his image. A wise man builds doors, allowing new ideas, experiences, and corrections to shape him into something greater. The proud man may win short-term applause, but the humble man wins long-term mastery. Picture this. Two warriors stand at the edge of battle. One refuses to learn new techniques, confident that his old skills are enough. The other studies constantly, sharpens every weapon, seeks advice, learns even from his mistakes. When the fight begins, who survives? It is not the one with pride. It is the one who never stops learning. Life is no different. Pride will make you rigid and rigidity breaks. Humility makes you flexible and flexibility endures. And here is the painful irony. Men often cling to pride because they fear looking weak. But in doing so, they guarantee weakness. No one is more fragile than the man who cannot admit his flaws. No one is more limited than the man who pretends he has already arrived. And no one is more vulnerable than the man who refuses to evolve. The Stoics sought wisdom daily, not because they lacked strength, but because they understood strength is never final. It must be renewed. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man on earth, still wrote nightly in his journal, reminding himself of lessons, mistakes, and truths he had yet to master. If an emperor could remain a student, what excuse does any of us have to let pride block our growth? But here lies the unsettling question you must face. Are you building walls of pride that will one day collapse on you? Or are you building doors of humility that will lead you to the next level of strength? The answer determines whether your solitude will make you a master of wisdom or a prisoner of your own arrogance. Mistakes number 11. Losing control of your emotions. Losing control of your emotions is one of the most dangerous traps of solitude because when no one is there to check you, your inner storms can grow unchecked. Loneliness magnifies everything. A spark of anger becomes a wildfire. A passing sadness becomes despair. A flicker of fear becomes a shadow that haunts you day and night. The danger is not the feeling itself, it is the surrender to it. Epictetus left us a principle that pierces through time. Men are disturbed not by things but by the views which they take of them. The event itself is powerless. It is your interpretation that gives it teeth. Lose control of that, and you hand your life over to illusions. The man who cannot govern his emotions becomes a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Anger dictates his words. Fear dictates his choices. Sadness dictates his energy. He believes he is acting freely, but in truth he is enslaved to impulses. And the cruelest part is this. Emotions not mastered will always strike at the worst moment. Rage will erupt in front of the wrong person. Fear will paralyze you in the face of opportunity. Sadness will drain you just when strength is required most. This is not bad luck. It is the price of refusing to train your inner world. But here is the revelation the Stoics understood. Emotions are not enemies. They are signals. Raw energy waiting to be shaped. Anger can become fuel for justice. Fear can become awareness. Sadness can become depth. But only if you remain the commander of the ship. If not, that same energy destroys you. Mastery of emotions is mastery of life, because it means you are the one who decides, not the storm. Think of it like a warrior in battle. If he panics, he exposes himself. If he rages blindly, he swings wildly and tires quickly. But if he remains calm, even under fire, he sees clearly, acts decisively, and wins. Life is the same. The man who can stay composed while everything collapses around him is a man who cannot be broken. Loneliness makes this training harder, but also more crucial. When you live alone, no one will stop you from spiraling. No one will pull you back when your thoughts drown you. That is why the Stoics demanded daily practice, reflection, journaling, meditation, because the war inside never ends. The enemy is not outside. It is the way you choose to see the outside. And here lies the challenge you must face. Will you allow your emotions to drive the wheel of your life until they crash you into ruin? Or will you seize the helm and guide that energy toward mastery? The truth is simple but brutal. The man who loses control of his emotions loses control of his destiny. But the man who learns to command them becomes untouchable. Which begs the question, when the next storm rises inside you, will you be the prisoner of it or the master who turns the storm into his greatest weapon? Mistakes number 12. Quitting at the first difficulty. Quitting at the first difficulty is the silent grave where countless dreams have been buried. Most men, when confronted with resistance, fold. They mistake the presence of obstacles as a sign to retreat, when in truth, obstacles are not roadblocks. They are the road itself. Marcus Aurelius delivered this immortal truth. The obstacle is the way. Every hardship, every wall, every storm is not an enemy standing in your path. It is the very forge that shapes you into the man capable of reaching the destination. But the tragedy is that many never realize this. They give up too soon, leaving their potential unborn, their strength untested, their greatness unrealized. The pattern is always the same. A man begins with excitement. He sets a goal fueled by vision. But the moment the first hardship arrives, the fatigue, the failure, the rejection, his fire weakens. He convinces himself it was not meant to be, or that life is unfair, or that others have it easier. And so he retreats. But what he does not see is that the very challenge he fled from was the doorway to his transformation. Difficulty is not punishment, it is initiation. Those who endure it are initiated into the rare brotherhood of men who grow stronger with every strike. The Stoics embraced hardship because they understood its secret. Resistance is what creates strength. Just as a blacksmith's hammer shapes the iron, life's blows shape the soul. Without pressure, there is no diamond. Without weight, there is no muscle. Without trials, there is no wisdom. The man who quits early denies himself the privilege of becoming what he was destined to be. He stays comfortable, yes, but comfort is just the slow poison of unrealized potential. Imagine two men standing before a mountain. The first looks at the steep climb, feels the burn in his legs, and decides it is too much. He walks away, convincing himself it wasn't important. The second feels the same burn, but he keeps climbing. With every step, his body hardens, his breath strengthens, his vision expands. At the summit, he sees a world the quitter will never know. The difference between these two men is not talent, it is endurance. And here lies the haunting truth. Most men are capable of greatness, but they bury it by quitting at the very threshold of their breakthrough. They turn back at the gate of transformation because it feels uncomfortable, not realizing that discomfort is the sign they are exactly where they should be. The obstacle is the way. The question is whether you will walk it or abandon it. So let me ask you, when life confronts you with the wall, when your strength trembles and your mind whispers to quit, will you retreat like the masses? Or will you step forward knowing that beyond that wall lies the version of you that no weakness can destroy? The answer to that question determines whether your solitude will make you fragile or forge you into iron. Bonus mistake number 13, refusing to rewrite your mental story. Refusing to rewrite your mental story is perhaps the most dangerous mistake of all because it doesn't just weaken you in the present, it rewrites your entire identity. Many men live their lives chained to a script they never chose. They replay scenes of failure, rejection, betrayal, and humiliation until those memories become their definition. They tell themselves, I am the man who always fails. I am the one who was left behind. I am the one who is not enough. And because they repeat this story, they begin to live it again and again, turning the past into a prophecy. This is the slowest and most devastating form of suicide. Not the death of the body, but the death of possibility. The Stoics, however, revealed a truth that can shatter these invisible chains. You have power over your mind, not outside events. What does this mean? It means your past is not your prison. Your thoughts are. The betrayal happened. Yes, the failure was real. Yes, but the meaning you attach to it is yours to decide. And meaning is everything. A man who interprets his scars as proof of weakness will collapse under them. But a man who interprets those same scars as lessons, as training, as evidence of survival, will walk with an armor that no one can penetrate. Refusing to rewrite your mental story keeps you trapped in someone else's narrative. Maybe it was a parent who told you that you'd never amount to anything. Maybe it was a partner who abandoned you. Maybe it was the world that ignored you. But why would you let their voices become the author of your destiny? Every day you wake up, you hold the pen. You can continue copying the old script, or you can burn it and write a new one. That is what daily reflection, journaling, and conscious awareness are about. Not vanity, but liberation. Each page, each thought, each decision is a chance to say, I am not defined by what happened to me. I am defined by how I choose to respond. Now imagine a man living in chains, shackled not by steel, but by words carved deep in his mind. You're not worthy. You'll always fail. You can't change. He drags these words everywhere, and they determine his every step. Then imagine the moment he realizes the chains are not locked. They are illusions. He stands, breaks them, and for the first time walks freely into the future. This is what happens when you dare to rewrite your mental story. You stop being the victim of the past, and you become the architect of the future. But here lies the urgency. If you refuse to rewrite your story, you will live the same day 1,000 times and call it a life. You will let ghosts dictate your future, and your greatest potential will remain buried. If you embrace the power to reframe, however, your solitude becomes your library, your battlefield, your sanctuary, a place where you reprogram your identity into something unbreakable. And now the question lingers like thunder in the distance. Will you continue rehearsing the same script that keeps you small? Or will you seize the pen and write the story of a man who refuses to be a prisoner of his past? Because the moment you decide to rewrite your mental story, you stop merely surviving. You begin creating destiny itself. Conclusion: loneliness does not destroy you. It exposes you. It strips away the illusions, the noise, the masks, and leaves only the truth of who you are. In that silence, you discover whether you are a prisoner of weakness or a master of yourself. These 12 mistakes are not small flaws. They are invisible chains tightening around men who are unaware. But Stoicism has always offered the key, the philosophy of warriors of the soul, a discipline that teaches you not to escape solitude, but to conquer it. If you avoid these mistakes, if you embrace the lessons carved by time and fire, your solitude will cease to be a curse. It will become a battlefield where your strongest self is forged, a crucible where your doubts burn away, and your character emerges indestructible. Now the choice stands before you. Are you ready to continue drifting among the 99% of men enslaved by impulses, comfort, and fear? Or will you rise into the 1% who live by purpose, by discipline, by inner power, unshaken by the world? The path is brutal, but it is real, and the decision is yours. If your answer is yes, declare it now. Write in the comments, I choose strength over weakness. Do it not just as words on a screen, but as a vow to yourself, a line you will never cross back. This moment is your turning point. Do not waste it. Stand tall. Choose strength. Choose mastery. Choose to be the rare man who looks solitude in the eye and turns it into fire. The world does not need more men broken by silence. It needs men who rise from it unshakable. Be that man.